Black cleaner gives his last $50 to a single mom and her daughter. What follows changes their lives. Michael was a kind-hearted man who worked as a cleaner in a small, local restaurant. The bustling city around him had a constant hum of life, yet he often felt invisible in the grand scheme of things. His life wasn't easy, and every day he worked tirelessly, sweeping floors, cleaning tables, and making sure everything in the restaurant was spotless. But despite the long hours and little pay, Michael found joy in small acts of kindness. His own life had been filled with struggle, but he never allowed that to make him bitter. Growing up in a rough neighborhood, Michael had learned at an early age that the world wasn't always fair. His parents had both passed away when he was still young, leaving him to fend for himself. But rather than feeling defeated, he made sure to give back to others. It was the little things, like helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries or offering a kind word to someone having a bad day, that made a difference in his life. One late evening, as the dinner rush started to wind down, Emily walked into the restaurant. She was a single mother in her early 30s, with a tired look on her face but a smile that radiated warmth. She had her daughter, Lily, with her, a young girl with bright eyes and a playful spirit. They had been to the restaurant a few times before, and Michael had seen them, but they had never really spoken. Emily often came in to grab something quick before heading back to their tiny apartment. Money was tight for her, but she made sure that Lily always felt loved and cared for, no matter how little they had. That evening, Emily sat down at one of the tables near the window. She smiled at Lily as the little girl took out a small book from her bag, flipping through the pages while her mom scanned the menu. It was clear that Emily wasn't there for a lavish meal. She just wanted to feed her daughter and make sure she was okay. But that night, something unusual happened. Emily looked at her wallet, a frown crossing her face as she counted the bills inside. She didn't have enough for the meal. She glanced at the small pile of coins she had left, then at the menu again. She was trying to do the math in her head, calculating if she could pay for the food with what she had left. Michael noticed the small hesitation and the flicker of concern in her eyes. He didn't think much of it at first, just continued with his cleaning duties. But as he passed by, he heard Emily quietly whispering to Lily, trying to explain that maybe they would have to skip this time and go home. Michael paused for a moment. He saw the way Emily was trying to keep her cool for Lily's sake, but he could also see the weight of her struggle. It was a weight he understood well. As he made his way to the back of the restaurant, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to do something. He wasn't rich by any means. His wages were enough to get by, but not much more. But the thought of this mother and daughter going home hungry didn't sit right with him. Without even thinking about it too much, Michael reached into his wallet and pulled out the last $50 he had. It wasn't much, and he wasn't sure how he was going to make it through the week without it. But as he stood there, looking at the crumpled bill in his hand, he knew what he had to do. He walked over to Emily's table and, gently placing the money in front of her, said quietly, "I know it's not much, but it's all I have. Please take it. You and your daughter shouldn't have to worry about food." Emily blinked in surprise, looking up at him as though she hadn't expected anyone to offer help. She opened her mouth to say something but hesitated. For a moment, she just stared at Michael, unsure of how to react. She had never been in a situation where someone gave without expecting anything in return. She had always been the one to help others, but now she was the one on the receiving end. Michael smiled softly, reassuring her. "I've been there. Please take it. You and your daughter deserve a good meal." Emily, still taken aback by the gesture, took a deep breath. It wasn't easy for her to accept help. Her pride often made it hard to reach out, even when things were tough. But as she looked into Michael's eyes, she saw nothing but sincerity and kindness. Slowly, she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, I don't know what to say." Michael shook his head. "You don't need to say anything, just take care of your daughter." For a moment, Emily sat there, staring at the money, unable to believe what had just happened. She had expected to have to turn away from the restaurant, to walk out without anything, but here she was, being offered a small piece of help from a stranger. She didn't know why Michael had done it, but it felt like more than just a simple gesture. It felt like someone cared, like someone noticed her struggles and wanted to ease them, even if just for a little while. Lily looked up at her mom, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Mom, why is he giving us money?" Emily smiled softly at her daughter, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill. "He's being kind, sweetie. Sometimes people help others just because they care." Michael walked away after a brief exchange of smiles. As he returned to his cleaning duties, he couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth inside. He had done something small, but it felt like it meant more than just helping a stranger. The night went on, but the impact of that moment stayed with both Emily and Michael. For Emily, it was a reminder that even when life seemed hard, there were still people who cared. For Michael, it was a reaffirmation of his belief that even the smallest act of kindness could make a difference. As Emily and Lily left the restaurant later that evening, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had never expected to encounter someone like Michael, someone who would give away the last bit of what they had just to help someone else. And though she didn't know it yet, that simple act of kindness would be the beginning of a friendship that would change both of their lives in ways they couldn't have imagined. The days that followed were filled with a sense of warmth, but also quiet reflection for both Michael and Emily. Emily had never expected to be in a situation where she had to accept charity, let alone from a complete stranger. Michael's generosity had shaken her, not just because of the $50 he had given her, but because of the kindness behind it. It wasn't something she was used to. Life had taught Emily to be self-reliant, to always figure things out on her own. After the sudden death of her husband, she had learned to carry the weight of responsibility alone, with little help from anyone. The world seemed to move at its own pace, indifferent to her struggles. But Michael had broken through that wall of isolation, offering something she hadn't felt in a long time, compassion. And in that moment, she didn't know how to handle it. When she returned home that evening, she couldn't stop thinking about what Michael had done. She sat in the small kitchen, stirring a pot of soup for Lily, who was busy playing with her toys in the next room. Emily's thoughts were filled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, she felt grateful, even overwhelmed. But on the other hand, she felt embarrassed. She had always prided herself on being able to take care of things herself. Accepting help, especially from a stranger, felt like a loss of control. Yet, as she looked over at Lily, happily lost in her game, Emily knew that accepting the help wasn't about her pride. It was about providing for her daughter, making sure that Lily's life didn't have to carry the burden of financial stress. Lily deserved so much more than what Emily could offer on her own. The next few days were a blur of work and exhaustion for Emily. She worked long hours at the diner, barely earning enough to cover their rent and utilities. She had taken the $50 from Michael and put it aside, telling herself that she would find a way to pay him back. But a small voice inside her told her that the money might not be the most important part of what he had given her. It wasn't just about the cash. It was the understanding, the human connection, the feeling that someone saw her, truly saw her, and wanted to make life a little easier for her. Meanwhile, Michael couldn't stop thinking about Emily either. When he had handed over that $50, he hadn't expected anything in return. It wasn't about repayment. But as the days went by, he found himself wondering how she was doing. He wondered if she had used the money for food, if it had helped her and Lily. He wondered if his small gesture had made any difference at all in her life. Michael wasn't used to making a big deal out of things like this. He was a humble man who had always kept to himself, but something about Emily's situation had struck a chord with him. She reminded him of his own mother, who had always sacrificed everything for him and his siblings, despite the hardships they faced. Michael knew what it felt like to struggle and to feel like the world was against you. But his mother had always taught him that kindness, no matter how small, could make a world of difference. And that was the lesson he carried with him every day. A few days later, Michael found himself passing by the diner where Emily worked. He hadn't planned to go in, but something urged him to stop. As he stood outside, he saw Emily through the window, moving swiftly between tables, a look of quiet determination on her face. He knew she was doing her best, but he also saw the exhaustion in her eyes. It was hard to keep up the pace for so long, especially without much help. Inside, Emily was carrying a tray of food to a table when she caught sight of Michael standing outside. Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure why, but seeing him there brought a flood of memories back. The way he had looked at her with no judgment, only kindness, it had been so unexpected. She smiled, and for a moment it felt like time slowed down. She didn't know how to explain it, but Michael's presence seemed to bring some comfort to her. After her shift, Emily stepped outside to talk to him. She wasn't sure what to say, but she knew she had to thank him properly for what he had done. "Hey," she said softly, her voice almost hesitant, "I just wanted to say thank you for everything." Michael smiled, his eyes warm. "You don't have to thank me, I just did what I felt was right." Emily nodded, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to do something to show her gratitude. "I don't know how to repay you," she said quietly, "but I'll find a way." Michael looked at her, his face serious. "You don't need to repay me, Emily. I didn't do it for anything in return. You just take care of yourself and Lily. That's enough." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. There was so much more she wanted to say, but the words didn't come easily. Instead, she just smiled at him. "I'll never forget this. You've helped me more than you know." Michael simply nodded, his expression gentle. "Take care of yourself, all right." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emily standing there, feeling like something had shifted inside her. She had always been someone who kept to herself, never asking for help, never letting anyone in. But Michael's kindness had opened something in her, a door to a world where people cared about each other, where there was hope even in the toughest times. As the days passed, Emily found herself thinking more and more about Michael. She had always been focused on surviving, on getting through each day with as little trouble as possible. But now, she realized that she couldn't do everything alone. She had been so focused on her pride that she had forgotten about the importance of human connection. One afternoon, Emily sat down with Lily after school, the two of them enjoying a quiet moment together. Lily was excitedly telling her mom about her day, but Emily wasn't really listening. Her mind was elsewhere. She thought about Michael and the kindness he had shown her. She thought about how much it had meant to her, how it had made her realize that there was more to life than just survival. There was kindness, there was community, and there was love. As the days went by, Emily started to let go of her pride. She knew she couldn't carry everything on her own, and that was okay. Sometimes it was okay to ask for help, and when she saw someone in need, she made sure to pay it forward. It wasn't about repaying debts. It was about creating a circle of kindness, one that would continue long after the money was gone. Michael's act of generosity had changed her life in ways she never expected. It had opened her heart to the possibility that the world wasn't as cold and uncaring as it often seemed. It had given her the strength to keep going, to keep fighting for a better future for herself and her daughter. The days grew warmer as spring slowly started to take over the city. Emily's life, though still challenging, was beginning to feel different. After Michael's act of kindness, something inside her had changed. It wasn't just about the $50 anymore. It was about what that small gesture had awakened in her, a feeling of hope, of possibility, and most importantly, of connection. For the first time in a long while, Emily began to feel that maybe she wasn't as alone as she had once thought. She had always kept to herself, never reaching out, always trying to handle everything on her own. But with each passing day, Emily realized that she couldn't do everything by herself. There was a strength in asking for help, and she had learned that sometimes the most difficult thing to do was to allow others in. Her days at the diner had been exhausting, with long shifts that seemed to stretch on forever. But she had a new perspective now. It wasn't just about working hard to get by. It was about doing her best and recognizing when she needed a little support. Slowly, she began to allow herself to accept the small acts of kindness that came her way, whether it was a smile from a customer or a word of encouragement from one of her coworkers. At the same time, Michael's life had also begun to change. He had always been someone who lived modestly, never seeking attention or accolades. But since that night when he had given Emily the $50, he found himself thinking more about the choices he made, about the ways he could continue to help others. Michael had always worked hard, but he had never been one to expect anything in return. He had simply believed that helping others was the right thing to do. One evening, after finishing his shift, Michael found himself walking through the city streets, his mind busy with thoughts about Emily and her daughter. He had seen them a few more times after the restaurant incident, and each time, Emily seemed a little brighter, a little stronger. It made him feel good to know that, in some small way, he had helped. He passed by the park where he often sat to clear his mind. Tonight, he felt a pull to stop. He sat down on one of the benches and looked out at the sky, taking in the calm evening air. It was moments like these, alone with his thoughts, that made him appreciate the quiet moments in life. It was in these moments of peace that he thought about what really mattered. As he sat there, lost in his thoughts, he saw Emily and Lily walking down the street. They were heading home, Emily holding a small bag of groceries while Lily skipped along beside her laughter echoing through the air. Michael couldn't help but smile as he watched them. He had noticed the change in Emily. She had become more open, more willing to embrace the little moments of joy, and it filled him with a sense of pride. Without thinking, he stood up and walked over to them. Emily looked up in surprise as he approached, but the surprise quickly faded into a smile. "Hey, Michael," she said, her voice light and warm. "Hey, Emily," he replied, his tone easy. "I didn't mean to interrupt your walk, just wanted to check in on you." Emily nodded, her smile growing. "We're doing okay, just getting some things for dinner." Lily, ever the curious one, stopped and looked up at Michael with her wide, innocent eyes. "Are you the nice man who gave my mom the money?" she asked. Her voice was soft but filled with a sense of wonder. Michael chuckled softly, bending down so he was eye level with Lily. "I guess that would be me," he said with a wink. "But it was nothing, really." Lily smiled brightly. "You're really nice." Emily's heart swelled with emotion as she watched Michael interact with her daughter. There was something so simple, yet so profound, in the way he treated both of them. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the kindness he had shown, the way he had made them feel seen, important, and cared for. "Thank you," Emily said quietly, her voice sincere. "You've made such a difference in our lives." Michael looked at her, his expression gentle. "I didn't do much, Emily, but I'm glad to see you and Lily doing better." There was a moment of silence between them, a comfortable kind of quiet, before Emily spoke again. "Actually, I've been thinking. I've been so focused on surviving, on just getting by, that I haven't taken the time to think about the future, about what I really want for Lily and me. I've been so stuck in the day-to-day that I forgot to dream." Michael nodded, understanding her words. "I know what you mean. It's easy to get caught up in just trying to make it through the next day, but sometimes you've got to look ahead and think about what could be." Emily smiled softly, grateful for the conversation. She had never shared these thoughts with anyone before. It felt good to admit that she wasn't just surviving, she was trying to build something better, something more meaningful. And in that moment, she realized that there was hope for her and Lily after all. "I've been thinking about getting a better job," Emily continued, her eyes lighting up with the idea. "Maybe something that gives me more time with Lily, but also something that can help us get ahead, give her a better life. I've been looking at some opportunities, and I think it's time to take that leap." Michael smiled at her, impressed by her determination. "I think that's a great idea. You've got the strength to make it happen, Emily. You just need to keep believing in yourself." Her heart warmed at his words. It was exactly the kind of encouragement she needed to hear. "Thank you, Michael. You don't know how much this means to me." Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Can we go to the park, Mom?" Emily laughed softly, ruffling Lily's hair. "Sure, sweetie, let's go." As they made their way to the park, Michael stayed behind, watching them for a moment. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction in seeing Emily take steps toward a brighter future. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about the small moments, the encouragement, and the belief that things could get better. Over the next few weeks, Emily's life began to shift. She started applying for new jobs, ones that offered more flexibility and a chance to grow. She felt a renewed sense of purpose as she worked toward building a better future for herself and Lily. It wasn't going to be easy, but she was no longer afraid to try. And through it all, Michael remained a quiet presence in her life, offering words of encouragement when she needed them most. Their friendship, built on kindness and understanding, grew stronger with each passing day. As the seasons changed, Emily felt a sense of hope she hadn't experienced in years. She knew there were still challenges ahead, but she also knew that she wasn't alone anymore. With Michael's friendship and the love she had for Lily, she felt ready to face whatever came next. As the months passed, Emily's life started to transform in ways she hadn't expected. After making the decision to take a leap and search for a better job, she found herself applying to various positions that would allow her more time with Lily while also offering a better paycheck. The idea of a new beginning excited her, but at the same time, it was terrifying. The fear of failure, of not being able to make enough money, of not being able to balance everything, it all weighed heavily on her mind. She had spent so much time focusing on surviving that she hadn't taken the time to really dream about what she could achieve. Now, as she began to look at her options, she realized that her dreams were no longer out of reach. They were possible, but only if she took the first step. Michael continued to encourage her. He had become more than just a stranger who had helped her that one night. He had become a steady presence in her life, someone who believed in her even when she doubted herself. They saw each other often, exchanging stories and advice. Michael would stop by the diner for his usual coffee, and they would chat about everything and nothing. His calm, reassuring presence had become something Emily had come to rely on. But as much as Michael helped her see the possibilities, Emily knew that the next step would be up to her. She couldn't let fear hold her back any longer. She had to trust in her abilities and believe that things could get better. One evening, after a particularly long shift at the diner, Emily sat in the small living room of their apartment, nursing a cup of coffee while Lily played with her toys nearby. Emily's mind was racing. She had just received a call about a job she had applied for, a position at a local office, working as an administrative assistant. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a step up from waitressing, and it offered stability, but there was one problem. The job required a level of experience she wasn't sure she had. She could already feel the doubt creeping in. She had never worked in an office setting, never had the chance to gain those kinds of skills. What if they didn't think she was good enough? What if she couldn't handle the responsibilities? As she sat there, feeling overwhelmed by the uncertainty, there was a knock at the door. It was Michael, standing outside with a small smile on his face. "Hey," he said, "you doing okay?" Emily managed a tired smile as she opened the door. "I'm hanging in there, just trying to figure things out." Michael stepped inside, sitting down on the couch across from her. "I've been thinking about you. How's the job search going?" Emily let out a deep sigh. "I just got a call about a position at an office. It's a good opportunity, but I'm not sure if I have the experience they're looking for. I'm not sure if I can do it, Michael." Michael leaned forward slightly, looking at her with kind eyes. "Emily, you've been doing everything for so long. You've already shown that you have the skills to make things work. It's just a matter of stepping into a new chapter. You're ready for it. I can see it." Her eyes met his, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe his words. Maybe she wasn't as far from her goals as she thought. She had spent so long doubting herself, so long telling herself she couldn't do something different, that she had forgotten all the things she had already accomplished. "You really think so?" she asked, her voice small. "I know so," Michael replied with a gentle smile. "You've got the drive, the heart. That's what really matters." Emily nodded, feeling a surge of confidence. She still wasn't sure about all the details. She didn't know if she would be able to juggle the new responsibilities or what the future would hold. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid to try. She had Michael's encouragement, and that was enough for now. The following week, Emily went to the interview. She put on her best outfit, did her hair, and walked into the office with a sense of purpose. The nerves were still there, but she no longer let them control her. She had spent too many years feeling unsure of herself. It was time to take charge. The interview went well, better than she had hoped. The hiring manager was kind and understanding, and Emily was able to share her experience working multiple jobs while raising Lily. She spoke about her strengths, her ability to manage time, her work ethic, her passion for doing her best. When the interview was over, Emily walked out of the building with her head held high. She didn't know what the outcome would be, but she knew she had given it her best shot. A few days later, the call came. Emily was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine when the phone rang. She hesitated before answering, her heart pounding. It was the office. "Hello, Emily?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes, this is she," Emily replied, her voice steady despite the nerves she felt. "I'm happy to inform you that we would like to offer you the position. We were really impressed with your interview and believe you'll be a great fit for our team." Emily couldn't believe it. She sat there for a moment, the words sinking in. She had done it. She had gotten the job. "Thank you so much," she managed to say, her voice breaking slightly with emotion. "I'm so grateful for this opportunity." As she hung up the phone, she sat in stunned silence for a moment. It felt like everything had shifted. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when all the hard work, all the effort, all the doubts, everything had paid off. She had taken a chance, and it had paid off in a way she hadn't expected. Later that evening, she called Michael to share the news. When he answered the phone, she could hear the smile in his voice. "Hey, Emily, what's up?" "I got the job," she said, unable to hold back her excitement. "I actually got it." Michael's voice was filled with pride. That's amazing. I knew you could do it. She laughed, feeling the weight of the past months lift from her shoulders. Thank you, Michael. I couldn't have done it without you. You did it all on your own, he said. I just reminded you of what you were capable of. The next few weeks flew by as Emily began her new job. The learning curve was steep, and there were days when she felt overwhelmed. But each time she felt like giving up, she remembered the encouragement Michael had given her, and she kept going. Slowly, she began to feel more comfortable in her new role. She was finding her rhythm, and with each passing day, she grew more confident in her abilities. Michael, too, was seeing his own life shift. He had always worked hard at his cleaning job, but with Emily's success, he started to consider his own future. Maybe it was time for him to look for a new opportunity, one that would allow him to grow. The idea of stepping into a different role, one that could offer more stability and purpose, was becoming more appealing. For both of them, the future suddenly seemed brighter. They had both learned that change wasn't easy, but it was possible, and it was worth fighting for. They had each other's support, and that made all the difference. One evening, as Emily and Michael sat in a small cafe, chatting about their dreams and the future, they both realized that the little moments of kindness they had shared had brought them to this point. It wasn't about the money or the job offers. It was about believing in each other, supporting one another, and taking the steps necessary to build a better life. And as they talked about their goals and aspirations, they both knew that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Months passed, and both Emily and Michael found themselves on paths that had once seemed impossible. Emily's new job was everything she had hoped for, stable, rewarding, and with a sense of accomplishment she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't easy, but she had learned to manage her time better, balancing work with caring for Lily. She had begun to see the fruits of her hard work paying off, not just in the paycheck she brought home, but in the way she felt about herself. She had come so far from the woman who had once been afraid to ask for help, afraid to believe in the possibility of a better future. Now every day felt like a new chance, a new opportunity to grow, to be the best version of herself and for Lily. One afternoon, after dropping Lily off at school, Emily took a walk through the park. The sun was shining brightly, and the air was warm with the promise of summer. She had grown to love these quiet moments, the ones where she could simply reflect on how far she had come. She sat on a bench, watching the children play, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. It had been a year since Michael had first given her that $50. That simple, unexpected gesture had changed everything. It had opened a door to a new life, a life where she no longer had to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders alone. And in the time since, Emily had paid it forward in her own way, helping others when she could, always remembering what it felt like to be on the receiving end of kindness. As she sat there, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael. "Hey, how's everything going?" Emily smiled as she read the message. Michael had become more than just someone who had helped her in a difficult time. He had become a true friend, someone she could rely on, someone who always seemed to know the right words to say when she needed them most. "Everything's great. Work is busy, but I'm doing okay. How about you?" Michael had been doing well too. His cleaning business had picked up, and he had started to think about the future. He'd always been content working the same job, but after seeing Emily's courage, he had begun to question his own path. Maybe it was time for him to look for something new, something that could challenge him more, something that could give him the sense of purpose he had always sought. "Doing good. I've been thinking a lot lately. I think I'm ready to move forward too, maybe take on something new." Emily read his words and felt a wave of excitement for him. She knew how hard he had worked, how much he had sacrificed over the years. Michael was someone who had always believed in helping others, but now it was his turn to invest in his own future. She couldn't wait to see what he would do next. "That's amazing, Michael. You deserve it. Whatever you decide, I know you'll make it happen." She typed the words with confidence, knowing deep down that Michael had the strength and determination to make whatever he wanted a reality. Later that week, Michael called her. He sounded different, a little more upbeat than usual. "I did it, Emily," he said, his voice full of excitement. "I took the leap. I'm starting a new job as a supervisor at a cleaning company." Emily's heart swelled with pride. "That's incredible. I knew you could do it." Michael laughed, a sound full of happiness and relief. "It feels good to finally take that step. I've been thinking about it for a while, but I didn't know if I was ready. You know, it's funny. I've always been the one helping others, and now it feels like I'm the one being helped. You were the one who gave me the courage to try something new." Emily paused for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. She had helped him in a way, but in truth, it was Michael who had always been there for her, offering his quiet support, encouraging her to take chances, to believe in herself. They had both learned something valuable over the past year. Change was possible, no matter how impossible it seemed at first. "I'm really happy for you, Michael," Emily said, her voice warm with genuine happiness. "You've earned it." As the days passed, both of their lives continued to evolve. Emily settled into her new role at work, becoming more confident in her abilities. She had learned to trust herself again, to push through the tough days and embrace the good ones. It wasn't always easy, but she was stronger now. And each day that she watched Lily grow, seeing her smile, hearing her laughter, she knew she was doing the right thing. Lily had adjusted well to the changes, too. She was thriving in school and enjoyed the extra time she got to spend with her mom. Emily made it a point to spend quality time with her, taking walks, reading together, and making sure Lily felt loved and supported. Emily was no longer the woman who had barely scraped by. She was a mother who had found her strength, who had found her way. A year after that first act of kindness, Emily and Michael met again, this time at a small cafe downtown. It was a warm evening, and the streets were filled with people enjoying the start of summer. As they sat down together, they shared stories of their progress, Emily about her new job and her daughter's success, and Michael about his new role and the challenges he faced. "You know, I don't think I've ever told you how much that night meant to me," Emily said, her voice soft but full of gratitude. "The $50 wasn't just about the money. It was about you believing in me. It's funny how one small act can change everything. I was so focused on surviving, just getting by, that I forgot to dream. And because of you, I'm dreaming again." Michael smiled, his eyes reflecting the same warmth that had been there all along. "I'm just glad I could help, Emily. You've come so far, and I'm proud of you. You did all the hard work. I just gave you a little push when you needed it." They sat in silence for a while, simply enjoying the peace of the moment. Emily looked around, taking in the view of the city she had once felt so disconnected from. Now it felt different. It felt like home. She had found her place in it, and it was more than she had ever imagined. As they finished their coffee, Michael stood up, looking down at her with a smile. "I've got a lot to work on, but I'm glad we could sit here together." Emily nodded. "Me too. And you know, I think we're both on the right track now. Whatever happens next, I know we'll both be okay." They walked out of the cafe together, the evening air filled with the sound of laughter and music from the nearby park. Emily looked up at Michael, her heart full of gratitude. This was just the beginning, she realized. The future was still uncertain, but it was filled with possibility. They had both learned that life wasn't about waiting for things to get better. It was about making the decision to change, no matter how hard it seemed. And with each other's support, they had discovered that anything was possible.